Hello, beautiful friends, divine souls. Welcome back to the Sacred Light Collective podcast. I am your host, Ali, and it is my divine pleasure to be here connecting and sharing with you. I actually wanted to share with you something that I experienced recently, and it really got me thinking. And it's something that has been popping up in my sphere on and off for months now, and not just for me, but also when I've been working with clients one-on-one, this concept has been popping up. It's the concept of becoming comfortable with change. And as soon as I say that, I'm sure you're already having a visceral reaction to the concept of change. But what I really wanted to explore today is the understanding that change doesn't have to be something that we perceive with fear. And we can support our mind and our body to also recognize that change doesn't have to equal an immediate fear response. I was in a workplace recently and I hadn't been there for a few weeks as I'd been working remotely. So it was really interesting to be again in the office space and around the energy of a lot of different people and just feeling my way through a change of environment. And probably, let's say, outside of my comfort zone, because being in my home is very comfortable for me. Now, typically, I would often put headphones in when I'm in an environment like that, just so that I could listen to podcasts or to meditations, music, anything that helps me stay aligned to my energy and my space and help me stay anchored in my truth. Because sometimes I do find these bigger spaces, being around a lot of people can sometimes be unsettling for my energy, and I find that I'm easily reactive and drawn into conversations and spaces and just feelings that I would rather not be. And I can take things on that are really not mine. So I guess I use it a little bit like energetic hygiene around employing some boundaries. Now, because I hadn't been in this workplace for a little while, I did want to be open to some connection and some interactions with the people that worked around me, because I'm also conscious of balancing my social aspects with my desire to, be in my own space and in my own energy. And it was really interesting actually to observe there was a common thread going through a lot of conversations around me and with me. And these conversations were in relation to the change to the type of work that we'd been doing. And so for a lot of people, this was learning something new. And I was curiously listening to, the various complaints and the indignation and the general displeasure of what was being asked of people. I guess that they didn't feel like they'd had maybe appropriate consultation or hadn't been given enough prior notice. Maybe they didn't get the training that they thought that they needed. It was that kind of thing. And then it sort of started to slip into what I would call some really negative talk. And, when one or two people get on the bandwagon and suddenly you're in this spiral about it becomes quite petty and judgmental and critical. They were talking about management, and you can imagine where it spiraled into from there. And the more this occurred, the more people that it drew in and it fed down. And that was really interesting for me to observe. I found myself sitting there really curiously watching this unfold literally around me. And it was what was most interesting, though, is that in the past, I would have potentially been drawn into that conversation, or I would have wanted to be in that conversation so that I felt like I was part of the group, that I was part of the majority. Or I'd feel myself getting a bit prickly and like wanting to retreat and withdraw because typically conflict can make me feel quite uncomfortable. And that is my own personal stuff there that I need to work through on that. But I do often find sometimes those conversations uncomfortable because I know what's true for me and what's not true for me. And I am still learning. I am still, like you, learning how to show up in balance of this spirit in human form and in alignment to my truth. But what I noticed in this situation through this really curious perspective, watching this unfold and thinking to myself, what an interesting way these people are choosing to receive this opportunity. Because to be honest, a part of me was like, it's not that bad. It's really not that worth getting this upset about. And then I observed myself in this thought and almost felt bemused. That's a word that comes to my mind. I was bemused by these reactions and what was resonating around me. And I became really acutely aware that it didn't feel bothersome to me. It was just another thing that you work out what you need to do, you move on, and you do it. It really wasn't eliciting any positive or negative reaction in me at all. And I just felt myself thinking, okay, I'm just moving on with that. I'm just getting on with it without too much thought. And that was like a huge aha moment for me, because that actually is huge for me. That's really big, because I wasn't drawn into it. I wasn't also then being judgmental or critical of the people who had been drawn into it. I was just sitting there thinking, hey guys, it's not that bad. And then to deepen that again, it was like, oh, hey, Ali, you've actually become a lot more comfortable with change. The flexibility, adaptability to moving parts, you've actually become quite adept at. So it was really interesting to have this huge aha moment from this situation to identify just how far I'd actually come in my own relationship with change. And so I've been sharing this story a lot with my clients, because this has been coming through about really learning to become comfortable in the uncomfortable and learning to relate to change in a more neutral space, to allow it to just unfold, to not give it a meaning of good, bad, or positive and negative, and just to respond to life, to respond to what is happening from a place of adjustment, I guess would be the word. And that can be hard. And here I was witnessing a group of people who I adore all of these people. Like, I really wish that I could share with them the power in just letting go and allowing it to unfold and not getting caught up in it, because the more they got caught up in it, as you can imagine, the worse everyone was feeling. And then that was spreading across the floor. So I then actually did put my headphones in because it did become slightly challenging to actually switch off from. And because it did kind of dip into a place that really was not aligned for me. And I don't know if you are in a workplace or office environment, when someone has their headphones in, it pretty much signals that they're just working and that they're in their own space, and people tend to leave them alone. So I kind of was treading the neutral ground here, because I didn't want to withdraw from the space altogether, and I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to hear them in what they were experiencing and feeling. And I did try to share my thoughts and my feelings and a different perspective. And, not everybody is ready for that, and that's okay. I am very careful how I approach these things, so that I don't also ram it down someone's throat, because you need to be open and ready to see. There needs to be some awareness, isn't it? Self-awareness. And I think that once the day started to move through, and I know because I was in the middle of it, I think that me withdrawing in my space, me holding my energy, and I was sending out some love and some beautiful vibes to the space, sending out the energy of really allowing people or encouraging this energy of feeling safe. And so it wasn't long before I felt like there was a shift and it started to relieve. But I feel like this was such an interesting opportunity for me. This felt to be more about my experience in this situation and observing what was unfolding around me enabled me to reflect over the last 12 to 18 months. And I think as a collective, since 2020 with the COVID pandemic, we have been invited to reestablish and rebuild our relationships with change. And I think for me personally, in this last 12 to 18 months in my own life, and that's in a working career sense as well as personally, life has given me many experiences of change, of me needing to respond flexibly, to be flexible, adaptable, to move through experiences and situations, relationships and circumstances, and becoming more aware of being able to do that from a real neutral space. And it wasn't until this experience and being in that environment and witnessing my own reaction of curiosity and witnessing others' reactions with curiosity that I realized just how beautiful that these last 12 to 18 months for me has been. Because I was in a response like that for many years, exactly like those colleagues that I was describing. That was me for probably the majority of my working life. We are talking well over 20 years. And let's say extend that potentially through my childhood and teenage years. I was a child that did have a lot of anxiety and just didn't know she had anxiety. And in fact, it wasn't until my own daughter and had an experience and we went down the pathway of realizing that there was anxiety occurring that I could even appreciate and understand that that is exactly what I was experiencing as a child and as a teenager. And how easy, isn't it, to allow change to draw us into the depths of such a negative spiral. And I was in those depths, of this is happening to me. Why is this happening to me? Everything happens to me. But once I started to bring some self-awareness and self-responsibility into my relationship with change, I began to open to this understanding and see what almost a beautiful gift this was. Like a lesson of really coming into a softer relationship with change. And that is what was so remarkable for me and why I felt to share that little experience in the office, because I really saw the depth of change within my relationship with change itself. How much I had grown and expanded, and that I was already moving with change more comfortably than I'd even realized or given myself credit for. This was such a huge moment. And, when it started showing up through the client sessions, I knew that there was something more here. That's the beautiful thing I love about working with clients, is that I'm always being given an opportunity to learn and grow through my clients. And the synchronicity of what clients are experiencing with what I have just moved through is always such a beautiful gift. And I think that anyone that works in this space, working with healing, whether that be energy, whether that be coaching, mentoring, anything in this space, anyone will tell you that we are all just walking the same path, the same spiral. There are some of us that are just a few steps ahead so that we can be there to guide others through, to support others through. And so today, really, my key message was just wanting to open your awareness to the idea that change, or to change the language. Well, that's interesting, to change the language around the word change, the feeling of change, and working with the body, the mind, to begin to recognize that change doesn't have to mean an immediate reactive state. It doesn't need an immediate response. It can just be taken in the stride. Keep moving with the flow. Keep swimming in the stream. So I just want to invite you to become really aware when you are experiencing change, or things maybe feel like they're moving and shifting and it is creating some tension in the body, some overwhelm or some frustration, or you find yourself reacting, lashing out in response. And just taking a moment to recognize that that is your way of processing the change, and perhaps opening to developing your relationship with change as being nothing more than a course correction, a rewrite of a story, a new pathway to follow. And begin to see if you can allow yourself to step into the change with more neutrality, with just what is the action I need to take to move through this, and take one step at a time. Beautiful souls, that's all it takes, is one step at a time, and being really gentle and compassionate on yourself each and every step of the way. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing with me a slight celebration of my own journey, and hopefully some recognition of something new, a new understanding for you. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste.